On to some breaking inputs coming in right this minute. News that's breaking right now. Israeli military saying that rescue operations are happening across several parts of the country. That's the latest coming in. The Israeli military saying search and rescue forces currently operating in a number of locations in which reports of fallen projectiles were received. The development follows the Israeli statement that the military has intercepted several missiles across the country, and not just in Tel Aviv, other locations including Negev and Eilat. In fact, Iran's earlier strikes on Israel had injured over 60 people, with one critically injured. That's the latest coming in at this point, as we also get you those visuals. The Israeli military talking about the efforts being made on the ground and how the rescue forces are operating in several parts. We are awaiting further details on that front. The rescue operations underway where Iran projectiles fell is what Israel is saying at this point. All right, with us on the broadcast this minute is Dr. Bernstein, professor of political science, an expert who's been tracking those developments and can help us better understand what all of this really means for West Asia. Good to have you with us. Let me begin by asking you for your assessment of those statements that have been made at the United Nations just a short while back and the positioning being maintained by the US, Iran and the US, Iran, as well as Israel.
Thank you for having me. The United Nations and the diplomatic arena is really a critical part of the current game, so to speak, between Israel and Iran. You know, it's important to understand geographically, right? Iran and Israel are not going to take over each other. You know, I was watching before when you were showing the military strength of both sides, but it is very unlikely that tanks or armored vehicles are going to end up crossing borders between the sides. They would have to go through Iraq, Syria, possibly Jordan in order to get there. So really what's going to happen is we're likely to see all of the combat being in the air. We're going to see Israel carrying out these airstrikes and Iran carrying out those missile strikes. And this is all going to continue until some sort of diplomatic resolution, until either the United Nations comes in and forces both sides to calm down, or President Trump comes in and brings in some sort of deal between the sides. Russia has offered to intervene. But that is why the diplomatic arena is actually critically important. Obviously, the military activity is important, but both sides have been scrambling very hard to make sure that they are the ones that are heard diplomatically. In Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu put out messages in English long before he said anything in Hebrew. When the war started, all he wanted to do was make sure that Israel says its part first, and that's why both sides are making their case at the UN.
Right, so let me ask you this. How optimistic are you then of that de-escalation really happening as a result of those efforts?
At this point, I would say that either fortunately or unfortunately, it really depends on U.S. President Trump, because in the current balance of power between the sides, you know, Russia can offer to intervene, but Russia cannot compel Iran to sign any deal, and it certainly cannot compel Israel to do anything. In turn, the United States is really in the position, on the one hand, President Trump could compel Israel to do anything at this point. Israel is entirely committed to the United States. In the latest Security Council votes, it was 14-1 against Israel, or against what Israel wanted, because it was a vote to stop the war, and Israel wants to continue the war at this point in Gaza, and the U.S. vetoed that resolution. So Israel is completely dependent on the United States, and Trump could force Israel to say, just stop. In turn, Trump could also compel Iran and say, look, we can throw our weight into the war also and make it that much worse for you, or you could come to the deal. So at this point, the only international actor that might actually intervene is U.S. President Trump. You know, a lot can be said about Trump, but one of the things that is very, very consistent about him is that he's unpredictable. So we really don't know. What does he want at this point? He's put out contradictory messages throughout the day. He has said that on the one hand, he knew about the attack in advance. On the other hand, he has said he still wants Iran to come to a deal. He said that the talks will continue on Sunday. The talks since then have been canceled on Sunday. So At this point, I would not make a prediction because I really don't know. It's at the whim of someone who is entirely unpredictable at this point.
All right, let's just then talk about what is known for sure right now. Iran and Israel have maintained that their operations will continue. Israel earlier said Operation Rising Lion is continuing. Iran now saying that Operation True Promise 3 is only the beginning. In fact, the Iranian president calling this a near conquest. What is your assessment of the messaging then coming in from the two sides?
So both sides are showing that they are committed to living out the ideology that they have been talking about. Israel has maintained for years, Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is his motto that Iran will never have nuclear weapons and that he will die trying to stop Iran from having nuclear weapons. And this to him is the height of that promise. In turn, Iran has vowed over the years to be committed to destroying Israel, to Israel not existing. And only last year was the first time in history, despite all the threats, was the first time in history that Iran ever openly attacked Israel with its own military, and now it sort of has all of the quote-unquote legitimacy, because it was attacked first militarily, in order to strike back. So both sides, in terms of rhetoric, are saying we are going all out with our promises. Israel promised to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities. It is promising to do that. Iran promised to make Israel unlivable for Israelis. It has promised to do that. So in terms of rhetoric, that's where both sides are. Realistically, on a more realistic level, Iran does not have the capability right now to wipe Israel off the map. It has the capability to make Israelis' lives very difficult or impossible. We're looking at pictures right now coming out of Tel Aviv. So this is something that is going to badly damage Israel's economy and make Israelis really feel the war. In turn, Israel has the capability to really cripple Iran's nuclear nuclear capabilities. However, without landing troops on the ground and actually destroying each one of the centrifuges or destroying the plants, it is not necessarily that Israel will have the capability to completely destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities. I will say this. Both sides are talking about escalations, and in Israel they are talking about a 2-week campaign. They are talking about plans that may go on for at least 2 weeks. The Wall Street Journal today reported that Israel has attack plans for 14 days, each day what it's going to do. There's no reports of what Iran plans to do in each and every day, but we have seen that it took Iran less than 24 hours and they've already launched 3 different attacks at Israel. So both sides right now are just building up their rhetoric and trying to show their force. Really, what I think we're going to have to judge is what happens on Sunday. On Sunday was going to be the next round of talks between Iran and the United States. That is going to be a key moment when we see, even though the talks have been officially canceled, is Iran going to appeal to the United States and say, you know what, we're willing to negotiate a deal on your terms, but you have to make Israel stop this? Or is Israel going to continue and Iran continue to fire missiles? That's going to be the critical day. I think Saturday we're going to see the sides continue to trade blows. But Sunday, when it was supposed to be the 6th round of negotiations, that's the day I'm looking to see where the winds are blowing in this escalation.
All right, and you're saying that there is a possibility that those talks do go ahead.
Right now they've been officially canceled, but again, no matter what happens, that's going to somehow be the outcome of the war. Because the war is between Iran and Israel, at least. Not the war between Israel and Hamas or the Middle East. But the war between Iran and Israel is not going to end with either side surrendering. That's just not going to happen because militarily it couldn't happen at this point. So realistically speaking, at some point there's going to be some sort of diplomatic resolution. Israel is unlikely to say at any given point, you know what, we're done. We're done, we managed to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities, and we're finished. Israel wouldn't say that because it will want to continue to pound Iran more and more and more. In turn, Iran is very unlikely to say, okay, we are now okay with what the damage we've inflicted on Israel, and we're done. At some point, there will be some deal, not between Israel and Iran, but possibly between Iran and the United States, and that will be a way out of the war. I do see that that is likely. I don't necessarily think that that's going to be happening on Sunday. I don't think the sides are going to necessarily sit down and talk, but if on Sunday or Monday there starts to be negotiations, even behind the scenes negotiations between Iran and the United States, that's going to say that we're heading more towards that direction. In turn, if there are no talks between the sides and they just continue to escalate more and more, then we're likely looking at least another week of these images that we're seeing.
So in that scenario, how far do you think the U.S. really is willing to go? Because a lot depends on that as well.
Absolutely. The United States, again, I say that President Trump is unpredictable, and we all know that he's very unpredictable, but there is one thing that is very consistent about him. He does not like wars. He does not like wars. He thinks they're unpredictable. We saw this in India and Pakistan, where he quickly came in and tried to negotiate between the sides. We saw this in Russia and Ukraine, where he's trying to negotiate between the sides. We saw when he compelled Israel and Hamas to actually come to a deal right before he came into office. So he does not like wars. So he is going to be very reluctant, probably, to actually let the United States take an active involvement in the war. He's willing to defend Israel, and there was already reports that the U.S. participated in intercepting Iran's missiles. But at this point, I think that he would be very, very reluctant to get the United States involved in actively attacking Iran. I think he's going to threaten that a lot, but I don't think that we're actually going to see that at this point. A critical issue is going to be the different militias in the Middle East. There are a lot of militias that are backed by Iran. They are in Iraq, in Syria. There's, of course, the Houthis in Yemen. All of them stopped attacking the United States back in February of 2024. After 3 U.S. service people were killed in Jordan in one of their attacks, the United States threatened to attack Iran. Iran told them stop, and they stopped. Now they have threatened to again attack U.S. interests. Now, if they do, that'll be a different ballgame. If the United States is attacked directly, its interests in the Middle East, its soldiers, the United States may be pulled into this. So I think if the United States gets involved actively in attacking or not, it really depends on if they are attacked by either Iran or those other militias. Otherwise, we'll hear a lot of threats from Trump, but probably not active involvement.
All right, I want to continue that conversation. Let's just, for now, go back to those visuals that have been coming in, giving us a sense of the aftermath of what things have looked like on the ground, and I'll just come back to you. And let's also play out for you these visuals coming in of Iran's defense system being activated. This was just a short while ago. The moment was caught on video. Have a look. right, let's just go back across now to Dr. Burstein, who's been dissecting for us what the situation is looking like right now and what the two sides' positioning really looks like and the strategy. I have to ask you to also comment on the difference in the sheer volume when one compares Operation True Promise 1, 2 and 3 and what that also tells us.
So again, this is now a situation where everything has changed, the rules of the game, so to speak. You know, within the Middle East, but within warfare in general, there is very often what we call tacit agreements, agreements between warring sides on what you do and what you don't do. You know, even between the Houthis and the United States, for example, the Houthis attack ships, the United States attacked Yemen, but the United States did not go and fire 3,000 missiles and destroy Yemen. They did not fire nuclear weapons at Yemen. Similarly, the Houthis, they attacked different ships with drones, but they did not fire missiles at ships that sank entire ships. That's what I mean when I say there's agreements between sides, even if you don't really agree on it. What do you do and what you don't do, and when are you violating those? In the last two rounds between Iran and Israel, there were every time we were pushing those deals or agreements between the sides, so to speak, but we were pushing them within the framework of still certain limitations. Every time Iran fired missiles, Israel carried out attacks in Tehran or in Isfahan and Natanz, and then the sides said, and now we're done. And even then, Israel attacked specifically the air defenses around nuclear facilities, and Iran fired missiles, but their first attack certainly was much more for show, and it took 8 hours for them to come and they were intercepted. So a lot of this was done still within the framework of, look, we're showing you our force, but that's all we're doing. Now things are different. Israel, to large extents, declared all-out war. It declared that all bets are off. It launched its attacks. Its initial attack, the assassinations that it carried out, it assassinated the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, Iranians, chief of staff of the military, the chief scientists of the nuclear programs. When we were looking before at the images of the air defenses that were operated in Tehran, those were happening in the neighborhood where the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, lives and where the presidential palace is. Israel's attacking there. No reports are coming in that they are trying to assassinate the supreme leader, but attacks that are happening in his neighborhood. Israel's indicating, as far as it's concerned, all bets are off. In turn, Iran doing the same thing. Iran also showing, okay, if that's the case, then all bets are off. Iran has sent over 100 drones. It has now launched its fourth wave of missiles. We're seeing, again, these are images from Tel Aviv. These are very rare images to see. With all the wars between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Hamas, Israel and the Houthis, we have not seen this type of devastation in the heart of Tel Aviv. So Iran is also indicating, okay, if that's the case, then all bets are off. Now, how far this is going to go, we don't know. We don't know. Like I said, this is less than 24 hours old at this point. So we don't know if the sides are going to show a display of force for another day or two and then spiral down, or if they are going to continue to escalate. But at this point, what they are at least saying in rhetoric is there are no more rules of the game anymore. There are no more tacit agreements. All bets are off, and we are now in all-out war with each other.
All right, I wanted to just hold that thought there. I'll just come back to you. Some breaking inputs coming in right this minute as we keep a close eye on the latest details that are trickling in. Israel carrying out fresh attacks on Tehran. Several explosions have been heard in Tehran as per the latest. The fresh attacks coming after Iran launched volley of missiles into Israel. That's the latest coming in as we also continue to keep a close eye on what the situation has looked like on the ground after the escalation, the Iran-Israel war, as our expert was also pointing out, taking a shape that, as of now, leaves behind a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty about where things are headed, really, and what all of this really means for West Asia. Several explosions in the latest being heard in Tehran as Israel carries out fresh attacks on Iran. So this is a situation where I just want to go back to Dr. Burstein at this point. This is a situation where we are looking at the two sides, like you also pointed out earlier, giving out a strong message that they are not backing down, they're not going to budge, and they're going to continue with the attacks and the counterattacks.
And again, at this point, both sides are acting as if they are all in, and more than that, as though they have nothing to lose. Israel has said Iran is pushing forward towards a nuclear weapon. That is an existential threat to Israel. Therefore, Israel has nothing to lose. It is willing to go all out and risk, so to speak, everything in order to now stop Iran from having nuclear weapons. In turn, Iran, the supreme leader, also said that he has vowed many times in the past that Israel will now will cease to exist, and now Iran is all out in its attacks on Israel. Now, again, do both sides actually have the capability to carry that out, those promises? Not sure. It is for sure that Iran does not have the capability to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. At this point, they do not have that capability yet. Does Israel have the capability to militarily destroy every single one of Iran's nuclear facilities and make sure that they cannot be rebuilt? Unclear at this point. Israel has surprised us thus far in the extent in which they were able to carry out those attacks. They managed to attack the sites in Natanz and in Qom. Some of those are buried over 160 meters deep into the mountains. According to some reports, they have been destroyed. Israel, according to other reports, had Mossad agents that were planted on the ground that sent suicide drones within Iran. So maybe Israel has that capability. I don't know. I'm not saying that they do. But both sides are saying, as far as we're concerned, we have nothing to lose and we are all in. And again, it really depends on the next 24 to 48 hours. That's really going to tell us if we are going towards something that from now on is just going to be for the next several weeks. These types of images every night, or if this is going to be more of a limited escalation, that this happened in June of 2025 for a few days, and then the sides again de-escalate and come to some sort of not agreement with each other, but agreement with an international actor.
All right. At this point, of course, we are going to be keeping a close eye on what the situation looks like. As you said, the next 24 to 48 hours, absolutely crucial. We're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for being here and sharing those perspectives.
Thank you. Have a good night.